everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be reapproaching my Eerie Esper deck, the one I've been enjoying playing so much, and my oh my do we run incredibly hot with this deck today, and the variation that I have in front of you. I think this deck does have legs. I do think there is a correct build of it. Have I found it quite yet? I'm not sure, but I think this deck is incredibly sick. I like the win conditions that we have, and a very quick turnaround that we can kind of do in a tempo deck like this, or like a discard strategy, whether it's kind of winning because our opponent doesn't want to play with us anymore, which is oftentimes mono red, ironically enough, because we just keep playing nowhere to run, flickering it over and over again with our Pixie and Fear of Isolation. But let's go over the deck very quickly so we can get kind of a quick laydown of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to play out the game. And it's kind of matchup dependent, so other than just explaining the cards, we'll kind of hop into the game and hope they kind of help explain that a little bit more. But we're opting right away with the Scavenger, a 1/1, just an Eerie creature. Whenever an enchantment you control enters the battlefield, we can put a 1/1 counter on target creature. This goes incredibly well when paired with Sheltered by Ghost, and is kind of one of the reasons we stack up a little bit more on the 1-drops, so we can have good Sheltered by Ghost targets. Unlike the kind of Azoria stacks where they only play the Scavenger, and you kind of have to have that with Sheltered by Ghost with how current mono red best of 1 is. Sheltered by Ghost coming in on turn 1 or turn 2 is super good. So being able to make that creature a bit bigger there is kind of the main crucial point of this card being in it, or also making them larger in the future whenever we're kind of cycling them down. Other than that, we have 8 discard effects outside of obviously Liliana, but Liliana fills a bigger role than that. And Hopeless Nightmare and Bandit's Talent. Hopeless Nightmare enters battlefield, deals 2, our opponent's forced to discard 3 mana, sacrifice it, and we scry 2. Other than that, we have Bandit's Talent to make them discard a card unless they only have lands in hand, and then it's a discard 2, which is very nice. And then we pay a black at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. That player loses 2 life if they have 1 or fewer cards in hand, so it works like an 8 rack if you would. And then the final mode to help grind out games. If we go into the late game and we force them to discard, or they used all their resources, at the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards. So it does require them to have fewer cards on their turn and fewer cards on your turn to kind of get both of these bottom modes to work. Other than that, we play Nurturing Pixie, a card that we probably know well if you've been playing Standard for quite a while. When it enters battlefield, we return 1 target non-fairy, non-land permanent back to our hand. Most often, it's going to be a Hopeless Nightmare. Other than that, it's going to be a Nowhere to Run, which we'll get into here in a second. And Fear of Isolation is a cast, return a target permanent to our hand. And that is a requirement as an additional cost to cast this thing. So it is a good way to get around a counter spell if we're looking to pick something back up that control oftentimes has to let go because they want to counter whatever we're picking back up. And that comes to our best part. We have 2 Get Lost as just a universal removal. Mainly this is for temporary lockdown targets as we run mostly 2-drops here. But Sheltered by Ghost being a really strong 2-mana aura that when it enters, it exiles a non-land permanent that our opponent controls and then gives our creature a 1/0 and has lifelink and ward. And then if it's going on to something like a Scavenger, that creature ends up being a 3/2 with lifelink and ward 2, and the more you stack these on, the more ward gets applied because ward effects do stack as different triggers on the stack. And then for the second best enchantment that we've had printed, a Nowhere to Run, a flash -3/-3 2 mana enchantment, is a dominant powerhouse when it comes to Standard. With creatures our opponent control can be the target of spells and abilities as though they did not have hexproof, and ward abilities do not trigger. So that's very important for the snakeskin veils and things like that, where our opponent's trying to protect it, or the mono white aura that gives the thing hexproof temporarily. Or if our opponent has a Sheltered by Ghost themselves, we can completely ignore the ward cost with the Nowhere to Run, and that becomes very good against mono red when we're picking it back up and then replaying it against them, kind of shutting off their damage dealing threats whenever they die. So the final thing that we're putting into the deck is Thundertrap Trainer. I think this card is incredibly cool. I wanted to play it because I think the little boy is a thug, and I love him, okay? That's all the explanation you need on why this card is in here, because I love this card. It's so sick. But outside of that, it is whenever it enters, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it in our hand, the rest on the bottom. This works incredibly well as it can grab a Bandit's Talent, Hopeless Nightmare, a Sheltered by Ghost, Nowhere to Run, Get Lost, or Liliana, so it can help us get there, and is not necessarily the worst target of all time to pick back up and put back in our hand with the Pixie or Fear of Isolation, as it finds its value. And for the final stuff here, we have 2 Lilianas as a game ender if it's necessary, or a way to remove a threat that we can't necessarily move with something like a Nowhere to Run. And we have Entity Tracker to draw us a lot of cards. I will say the soft spot in the deck is a card like Preacher of the Schism, as we don't necessarily have a great ton of ways to get it off the board. I will say that is the only pain point. It doesn't necessarily show up today. That's why I wanted to bring it up now. But outside of that, this deck has a pretty good odds of answering any kind of aggro deck, in my opinion. And we run really well with it. So let's go ahead and dive into those games. And if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. I will be in Vegas. Please consider visiting. And then let's go game. I will keep. Now here's the thing. I feel like I have to play the Pixie on one this hand. You could argue maybe I don't. But, well, I guess if they show me a ley line, I definitely have to. But I feel like I have to regardless. Like, what's the worst case? I play Pixie on one. They're not red. I just play the Surveil land. Just like whatever, I suppose. Okay. Can't bounce anything, so couldn't ask me. Alright, sweet. Well, team, I think we know I have to exile this thing. And then we'll use Liliana next turn. Then we're just going to hit for a bit. This is Azorius Enchantments. So I basically have to make sure I'm blowing up everything every single turn. But if we keep drawing lands, we're going to fall behind too quickly here. The only downside, but I guess lands aren't that bad to discard. I'd like to play my Surveil land. It's just not going to happen, I don't think. Holy cow, man. I don't really play a lot of removal. This is just double Sheltered by Ghosts all in. I can't let that live. I don't think. I mean, at this point, I think I'm just all in. If I live, I just can't let it stick around. At least now my creature has double ward too. It has ward 4. The only thing that's bad is that they hit me with Sheltered by Ghost. Backup Lily is massive. We're weirdly going to figure this game out, I think. Surveil, anything other than a land? Hopeless Nightmare is not bad because we can always sack it here.
Enough with the mysteries. I've come.
What a dumb game to win, bro. I don't. Sometimes you win games that you feel like you really shouldn't. Also, I think the light in my bathroom's about to die because it just flickered really bad. So I'm going to go deal with that. This was a Nowhere to Run. I think I'll be sick, but one more. My bad. Alright, well. Kept worse. This one. This one, because outside of that, like, at least I have something to do. Or maybe it's this. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird choice. I'll play as tapped. Take a land here. We know land might not be the best of all time. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what my opponent's playing. I'm gonna hit him with this. This like feels like a weird thing to play. Yeah, honestly, that's pretty dope. Big fan, big fan. I think they're playing Rakdos Ramp, which has not been a thing in a while. Probably have like a lightning strike or a torch or something, or cut down, get lost, go for throw, etc, etc, etc. And here, with only one black mana available, definitely pop the removal. And we go for hand here. Then I think because I can pick to know where to run back up next turn regardless, I wait in case they duress me. Because, like, I don't know what happens if they play a claw to hit me with a duress. Or Liliana, I guess. The minus.
Happy to help, but I'm taking
Sure.
a break when we will. One of your friends has to leave.
Nightmare. Their hand again. Hitter. Now Deep Cavern Bat can kind of answer whatever, so I guess we're still picking this up, I think. Maybe it's just also play this and pick up to nowhere, and if they duress me, then they do. I just can't let the Gore Claw through, I suppose. But at some point, they're just going to hard cast it, so I kind of have to move past that idea. A plus is going to get rid of a Nightmare. Nightmare, Nightmare, Nightmare. Combat. Case of removal. We double attack here. There's no point going for one isolation trick here. I don't know if they'll have a way to give it haste. They didn't hit a lance, so Hopeless Nightmare should be good. Maybe they have a way to give the Crew Claw haste. Haven't seen anything yet, so I'm just not even going to attempt it as a thing. We have 4 damage on board. It's kind of 6 damage if you count the Hopeless Nightmares. This was named on horror. Interesting. Combat. These ones. Play here, and I honestly think I want to pass, and I want to sack this Hopeless Nightmare to maybe find a swamp. One of the reasons why. I can always answer it here in a second, so let's go for this. I can always answer it on my turn. I'd much rather find exactly that, and those two draws together are pretty good to keep us out of the woods. That out of the road. Move to combat. Hit. On the 4. Hopeless Nightmare. Set them to 2. Also disrupt. Now they have a lot they have to deal with. I don't know if they can. You're missing out. Trigger. Sure. I have 2 flyers. 2 good. Bitter Triumph a little bad. With that said, I feel like we have it covered. Ooh, no. Okay. That's pretty sick. It's pretty sick. Here. And that's all it's going to be. Very cool. Fear missing out with Gore Claw, or Infamous Claw. That's actually kind of wild. Opponent is first. We got Nightmare, pick up Nightmare, play Nightmare, or get lost if needed. So we're pretty happy. Okay. I'm going to throw up now. Nowhere to run is actually insanely crucial here to find. But Hand Disruption will work a bit. This is the teamer version of the list. Little tough again. Never mind, we're nuts. I don't... we'll fire this off now. Be getting rid of that, obviously. Ivy's good, just not as good without the Rot Priest in play. There's a 2-1 to hit me in the head. Here comes the Swamp. Should have played the Plains, but that's fine. Play a Pixie, maybe counterspells here. No. Nowhere to run, pick up. Be a Tidebinder. No Tidebinder. Okay. Turn. Done this already once, where I've interacted like this. I played against this deck earlier. I'm going to go for this now. Hexproof and stuff like Shore Up doesn't work, so we get that off the board, so now they can't target the Ivy to get an extra card draw here. Because Ivy says, if you're not sure, whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy that spell to target Ivy, and this has draw a card on it targeting our creature that they're hoping to target their own with. Yeah, I mean, so far, we kind of locked it up. We have a Get Lost ready to go for next turn if they do anything. If not, we have 2 damage kind of presenting every turn. We're only at 1 poison. They do have bounce things, or they have bounce spells that kind of proliferate. But this is not a creature you want to bounce, especially when there's a Nightmare or a Nowhere to Run in hand. but it's also possible our opponents had enough and they are moving on from this game. So we will come back whenever they time out, or they are actually thinking and making a play. Okay, hopping back in here. They ran out of time. I don't know what will happen. They'll make them pass their turn. Perfect pickup. We'll play this plane, so this will turn on, considering I just don't know what I'm doing half the time. I'll slam this. They'll have to interact or don't. I will plus, and with 2 removal spells that are live next turn, I will plus, get rid of the land, and then keep my 2 spells available. Alright, I think we're on the official final timeout here that the arena will give them before conceding, which I will skip the other timeout for time's sake. Leave it on the first one, then we'll probably just skip to here. So, very cool. We'll call out a good dub, and we'll just move on. Obviously we gotta latch onto this hand, I believe. So we'll keep here. Not too inclined to just fire off the Pixie onto this, especially now. So let's hit their hand while we can, and then we're gonna hold up this nowhere to run, bounce to nowhere to run, and then go from there. Deck hitting a card in their hand is good. They get rid of a land, so too many lands for our opponent apparently. And that's a scamp. Scamp's ideal for a situation like this. We'll play a Seachrome Coast. We'll pass because this doesn't have like prowess or anything like that. Obviously, it is kind of the de facto best. It could die. A double draw here means we remove it. 0 chance I'm letting you draw cards. Hopefully they have no lands. Oh, well, there's a pause, so they have a land. Very cool. So we can do one of 2 things here now. This comes in as an island. I lied to you. Yeah. So here, pick up here. Then me and my opponent can continue to stare at each other. And then a card like Liliana is going to have to close this game out, or we're going to get a ton of value off this tracker. Hopefully they do nothing this turn. And Liliana just being played and plussing might be the solution, or they just can't handle nowhere to run and concede. Sure, dude. I don't know. I feel like drawing the land's not high. If we draw a lot of like anything, I feel good. Yeah, sure. Exactly. I mean, sometimes better be lucky than good, I guess. But, I mean, I feel like the hand's fine. We're likely to draw something, right? Like, I don't think we're just going to sit here and spitball the entire game. Unless we flood, of course. But we play 22 lands, 4 in the opener. Kind of implies we're not going to draw another one. Obviously, I understand that variance happens and drawing a land can happen there. But you just play the percentage odds and go against it. Alright, well... 1 of these can kill me, and 1 can generate value. I will take the bigger one, I guess. Now. Well, now watch me draw Pixie, and then you're going to be really upset. Oh. I would have, though. No. Let's put a blocker in the way, I guess. Throw this up. Or if blocks don't even have to happen, if I could shelter this, that'd be huge. I think it's crazy that it almost felt like I drew the Pixie. And like it kind of was. Alright, well that land can only be used for a creature, so they only have like 2 mana here. Kind of. We'll see. Okay. Well. Is this to my hero? Like, what is that? Is that a Hired Claw? That's sick. No 2 mana spells here, so I might as well play the Backstreet. And a Scavenger's fine. Actually, it's pretty good, because I can play it and put a Sheltered on it next turn at worst case. Sure. We're holding up the card they know about. Now they have to be a bit more timid about what they do. 4th land, not good for them, that's for sure. That's fine, I guess. That's fine. I'll feel great about it. We know what we want to do here, I think. It should be pretty obvious for us. As they try to commit more spells, obviously we interact then, but I think it's obviously that we want to put this tracker in play. And they tap out. Sweet. That's dope. Now we get tracker in. I can play. To be fine. That mana makes sense. This one. Draw. I get losses there. And then now, I guess just eat this hero. Counter here. That thing's gone. There could be a slick shot or something, a flyer, so I'm going to attack with a 1/1 back and go up to 18. Just say with no creature in play that may or may not have haste, you'll have to try to answer. And this is 5 with ward 2. I guess you could argue we should have just sheltered again to give this ward 4 and double lifelink. Have it apply 2 times. But I just don't see how they ever answer that. Screaming Nemesis. Do it. They can shock it so I can never gain life again. That is definitely something they can do. Obviously no block here. We'll just take our 3. We have a way around it. We can try to get lost. We can shelter by ghost, target it, and then if they try to like lightning strike it, we can then get lost it and then not have to worry about it from the rest of the game. 2 mana. Okay. I mean, also fantastic draw, by the way. We target here because I don't want them to be able to shoot the scavenger in response. I think we're going to get exactly what... Yes. Alright. No more life for you. No more life for you. Last card, also gone. I thought they were going to shock... I thought they were going to shock the creature, but sure. Last card, go away. And, I think, okay. Oh, sick card, dude. Now, this sucks, dude. Sometimes I just want to play the trainer just to have a good time. But obviously here, we have too much open that we gotta go on it up. Like, it's bad manners to just play this. And also is like the only way to open ourselves up to a loss, which I don't even think is really possible there. It's definitely, no cards in hand, it's not possible. But, sure. Go first. Our hand's kind of running hot now, so that's kind of cool. This is shut off, only available for blue, so I guess we're starting off with the sewer here. Any kind of bounce effects or a nowhere to run is always good to latch onto here. So we kind of know what we want. If they put in a ley line, we definitely know what we want. This could tap for a black. We might just play it first with a nightmare, but no ley line comes in, so we just sewer. Another bounce effect is just good. I'll keep, especially if they're kind of a do nothing with a... This is the Bandit one, right? Yeah, so here's a Scamp. Scamperino, if you would. So, Nightmare come in. We make them discard. We Pixie. We pick the Nightmare back up. Could have played maybe the Scavenger and had it grow. Maybe that's probably something we should have considered doing. Monstrous Rage doesn't save it, so I'll just do this so they can't do the fling kind of nonsense against me. If they make a creature post this combat, then sure. Yeah, like I'll take 4 here. My bad. But realistically, taking 4 there and then manifesting does kind of nothing comparatively. So like taking 4, then they sack it, then I take 8, and then they still manifest, right? A sellsword in the bin, which typically just means, hey, by the way, I have this, and you have to deal with it. And we're like, okay, that's fine. Now I could Hopeless Nightmare. I could play this, or I can opt to try to play this and maybe use it to get lost. There's a lot of options. I could play this and then maybe Hopeless Nightmare. I think I just wait and hold the Get Lost while I have it. Mana held up. Don't know what it could be. No green mana shown. They flip that up. With a Swiss Spear, I will let it ride. We'll see what happens. It might even be a case, depending what they pump it with. Sure. 1 damage of 100% we let happen. I'll flash this dude in. Now we can maybe generate some value. They might have a lightning strike. Who really knows? We'll play here. Prevail. This could be a mistake. I'll put that in the bin. I will cast this Hopeless Nightmare. Take a card away from them, but also replace my card. And if we do find a Nowhere to Run, that's good for the following creatures. Not necessarily. Sometimes you just draw everything you need, dude. This is what it feels like playing mono red. You say the card and it appears. They said, man, I can't believe I didn't have a ley line in my opener, and I guarantee they drew that ley line. That's how it works, man. Now we can kind of flirt here. We can kind of block, force him to do something, and then get lost the creature. I love using weird terminology like, yeah, we'll just flirt around with this a bit. Can't necessarily use another spell, and the reason why Nowhere to Run, and the reason why we can't with the Swift Spear, because Prowess is so prevalent. A Monstrous Rage would put a roll token on it, and then it would also get the Prowess trigger, so it would go to 4 toughness, and Nowhere to Run wouldn't do anything. But playing nothing here, interesting. Interesting indeed. Now, I think the idea is to play Fear of Isolation, maybe hit a land here, pick up, obviously, the Hopeless Nightmare, and just continue to work down their hand. We could obviously play one of these Scavengers, but the mana just gets a little weird. And now the mana kind of makes room for it. I guess I'll play one now just to kind of grow my board a bit in case worse comes to worse. And now I can attack with this. And then when there's Nowhere to Run, draws me a card, pumps my Fear of Isolation, or I can pump the Tracker if I'm afraid of Lightning Strike, which I'm not really. A lot of mana from our opponent. Yeah, we'll just keep progressing here. I will play this because I feel like I'm going to hold 2 mana up for this for the rest of the time. Don't really need that right now. I'll play here. I'll play this Hopeless Nightmare. Put 2 counters on things. Here. Here. Now this Nowhere to Run can grow a Scavenger by 2, plus also remove the thing. And another red deck fights the dust against us, and it's one of the main things. So there's been a couple of hands. I know I don't like talking after this. I cut it a lot because I hate when I do this, but I understand like a little bit of fear of playing blue in this deck because I've had a lot of Orzhov hands just get the job done where I never see a blue card. But how good, you have to like evaluate how good this card was right here in this match, and like the extra addition of this card over something like the Orzhov Bat and whatnot, where I think it finds way less value than this Tracker if I get this Tracker to resolve and things like that. But very cool, very cool. We come away with the dub, and we'll move on. Opponent goes first. Drop, 2 drop. I mean, oftentimes it's good enough. Rule, a little less good. The protection. I mean, we're going to go for it. If they have it available, I guess. But most likely they'll be able to play a mountain here. Maybe they have nothing. Alright. Green mana available. Okay. Challenger comes in. No attack with the Scamp. A little afraid. I see. It's fine. Fine, I get it. We do this. We get rid of Challenger. We put a counter here. And then it's kind of like, do I attack? Do I not attack? And I'm on the impression that I attack here. I could die, but there's no ley line to really serve that kind of line of logic at 21. And I will have a second Sheltered by Ghost to get rid of it. There's a Might, a draw 1. Not the best all time. As long as they don't have a Snakeskin Veil, I feel super confident in our win here. But if they have it, obviously it's a little bit tougher. They don't have it. So we should be fine-ish. Scamp's been kind of a weird card, that's for sure. Advanced Talent could be good. I don't think it is. Because, like, I make him discard, but if they just kind of have it, they have it, right? So I guess I should go for a no? Is what I... Is scrying better than not scrying here? I think the answer is no. I'm not sure. I think I'm just going to play a Pixie to play a Pixie. Even though I've typically ruled against this judgment in the past. But I think I'm just going to do it. I'm gaining a lot of life. I still have this one to block, potentially. Any card outside of Monstrous Rage doesn't necessarily save it. Now, that's Wicked Roll Token. That's a pretty good card. It goes to 2. Now, Scamp's obviously scary, and maybe I should have answered Scamp because I like to treat those cards more often than not as though they have like a triple strike. I know that's a weird kind of thing. Well, there's Diamond, by the way. I took the Swift Spear, and I think... I don't know, man. It's just so weird. Because I think the other thing that I take into these matches that I play is Nowhere to Run typically can always answer this card, like every single time. There's not really much they can do to outgrow it. Because like a card like this is Sorcery Speed. But Swift Spear with the 2 toughness and the prowess ability always finds it very tough. Because if I try to Nowhere to Run this in response to, say, this card, right? Like a Witch's Mark. In the same exact scenario, outside of obviously... Like, they can't Snakeskin fail it because they can, I guess, in this situation. But if they cast anything that buffs the toughness, like a Monstrous Rage, for example, the Swift Spear will then go up to 4 toughness, and then the Nowhere Run will get it. So oftentimes I like to answer this over this in a situation like this game. But oftentimes you could probably argue for the opposite. But the only other thing I would probably change is I think I would play the Bandit's Talent and then pick it up with the Pixie just to get the extra kind of aura on this the following turn. Or maybe even like play the Trainer, find a good card, and then pick the Trainer up with Pixie because that can help us find the Nowhere to Run. I just think maybe playing Pixie was probably about the weakest thing on that turn. Maybe next turn we can find something better. But that's Diamond. Very cool. All right. Well, outside of that, I don't know if we could have run much hotter than honestly what a lot of those games end up boiling down to. There was often times I said I need this card and then I drew it off the top, so it's kind of hard to take that as like valid kind of like being justified for those wins. Sometimes always feels weird because it's like, yeah, I put the card in the deck to draw it, you know, like I put Nowhere to Run in my deck to have it every chance I can, but like even if I didn't have a Nowhere to Run, does the Shelter by Ghost still cover that kind of situation up? Maybe, or most likely. Or like Bandit's Towns can help sometimes. The one card I really was excited to play, but the one time I could have played it would have been kind of BM, and is Thundertrap Trainer. I do think this card might actually have some really strong value in this deck. It might justify another reason to splash blue outside of playing 4 more copies of like the Pixie. It's kind of an uncounterable way to pick our enchantment back up. But that is because this card can fetch or find, the way this is worded, enters look at the top 4 cards of your library, may reveal a non-creature non-land, so it cannot grab the Fear, but it can grab every single one of these right here. And with cards like Pixie, being able to pick this back up and use it kind of as a flicker effect, if you would, and then we can replay it back down. Or even late in the game, if we're really just looking for value, we can actually play this for 6 mana, and do the Offspring part, and then potentially play the Pixie and picks it back up. Because one of the things when you get to those late games, you're obviously going to have a lot more mana to operate with, and we do play only 22 lands. But 6 mana when you're drawing off a tracker, or you're finding things with Trainer to thin out the list, and then especially like the tracker draws in general, but you oftentimes can get to that mana, especially with Surveil lands and stuff, to find yourself into that late game if control is dragging you there. Like, you're going to eventually draw enough lands. So it's kind of like one of the small things. There was a game before when I was playtesting to try to figure out what I wanted to add in the deck to spice it up a bit, where I actually had the option to Offspring this and kind of do that. It didn't matter at the time because I had a lot of other things to do. But yeah, I mean, I can only imagine the Offspring, Thundertrap Trainer just being good in this deck. I can't see really why it would be bad. I almost even, to an extent, wanted to play 4 copies of this and run a little less of this, so I'm not replacing any enchantments. I'm just getting better, like, card draw, because sometimes you can argue that Fear of Isolation doesn't necessarily do as much. But it being an enchantment is just so good with the tracker that even when it does pick this up and your opponent may be empty-handed, the tracker still draws off the Fear of Isolation. This is 1 mana, deal 2, draw a card. If Shock said deal 2 damage to your opponent, draw a card, it would be the best Shock printed of all time. Like, so when you could turn that into, like, this enchantment into that, and then, like, it can even get better than that, where you have like the tracker in play and a scavenger, and now this is 1 mana, put a counter on a creature, draw a card, and deal 2 damage to them. Now Shock is just like mixing everything in, you know? But other than that, the only card I do feel a little bit off the wall with is Get Lost, but I think it's necessary because of Temporary Lockdown. Obviously, we're a little in that weird spot. Another card, I mean, we obviously could try playing is Temporary Lockdown, when we have a lot of cards like Fear of Night or Hopeless Nightmare, Fear of Isolation, things like that with the Pixies, where we're oftentimes like just basically doing that thing that the Orzhov deck has done for a while, where they temporary lockdown and then they pick it back up to kind of flicker everything. They use it as a universal flicker or a Yorion, if you would, something like that. And, I mean, it could come in clutch, obviously, but I think Temporary Lockdown is just a weird card, and I think Nowhere to Run kind of covers that spot enough on its own when it comes to those creature matchups that I don't necessarily feel like it's necessary in a way. But with that said, deck's a lot of fun. Final note that I kind of point out in a lot of these, kind of added to the rarity, I guess, if you would, but I think I trimmed rares elsewhere if I want to do this kind of right. Common, uncommon, 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 uncommon. So yeah, so as you can see, the lands are obviously kind of the big asterisks on the deck, especially when you're starting to play 3 colors, where it comes to like a lot of rares in the deck list, because all these are obviously rares. But in terms of cards in the deck, you definitely get pretty light on it. It's 8 rares and 2 mythics, I guess, and that's about as good as you can ask for a main board kind of like creatures and spells and stuff to be that cheap. But obviously the lands are a little tough. However, I will say the one massive thing that you get to do in this deck, and honestly you could probably make the mana better than I have it even, is that as you can tell, there's like 3 of these, 2 of these, 1 of this, 3 of this, 1 of this, 2 of these, 4 of these, and 2. I would argue that mana bases are probably honestly one of my weakest part of my games personally, and how to kind of balance which lands to play when. Not necessarily play in game, but like in terms of deck building wise. But we have 22 in the list currently, and this is kind of where I settled up. I didn't play a basic island. I added the blue cards after. We're 14, 14, and 10, so it's a little bit tough, but I think the islands are pretty much meeting that requirement here. We have like 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's about the same as like anything else, I believe, other than I think the basics are the only thing that make the difference really. Is it's 12 across the board, and then I have 2 basics of each, so take that as you will. Maybe a Mirrex or something to buy you like a random color that you need on a turn, but I think Mirrex is also kind of bad, but unsure in general. So outside of that, I hope you all enjoy, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.